Hi, welcome back to my channel. My name's Carter Walker. Love talking about movies, music, comics, and games, and I just got out of one of my most anticipated movies of the year, which is Scream 6. I am a big Scream fan ever since I watched the first movie back in high school. A little late, but overall it has definitely been one of the most influential movies of my entire life. Love the first Scream. I like the second one. I like the third one. I love the fourth and the fifth one, though, and so I was really looking forward to see what Radio Silence could do, returning from the fifth installment and directing the sixth installment as well, with the same cast as 5 and returning members from Scream 4 being Kirby and Gale from the original Scream. So, what I think about the movie? Well, let's get right into it. So, starting off with the good, the thing that stood out to me the most in this movie were the brutality and the kills. It just felt very different. I know that in every single Scream movie since 3 or 4, they've said, "Oh, I'm a different Ghostface. I'm something different." Always in the marketing, they always put that. But this time it actually felt different. The Ghostface felt a lot more brutal and actually delivers on that promise. There's a really great opening scene, which probably is my favorite opening scene apart from 1. I mean, one is just so iconic, but I think that 6 does a great job of establishing how different it is just in that opening scene, with a lot of great actors in there, a lot of big names, and then just kind of flipping it on its head and doing something very different that I did not expect in the slightest, and I really love that. I loved how original it was, and especially how brutal it was. There's a lot of the dialogue was just very brutal and very blunt, and then the attacks that the Ghostface attacks. I'm sorry, I'm trying not to spoil it as best as I can because I'll get crucified in the comments. But it was very brutal with how the Ghostface was portrayed throughout the entire movie, and it didn't let up at all, which I really enjoyed and I really appreciated. I think Radio Silence did a great job directing this movie. It looks beautiful. It's shot very well. There's a lot of great kill shots where the knife goes in somewhere, or you see someone's body and it just focuses on it and just shows how brutal it was. And everyone in my audience was just oh my gosh, the audience that I saw it with must have been people were wearing Scream shirts and everything. There was a ton of college kids, a few older people, so they're Scream fans like myself, which was awesome to see. And I went with my roommate Caleb, who loves Scream as well, and both of us were at the beginning of the movie, people were oh my gosh, kind of getting into it, and by the end of the movie people were cheering when people would get stabbed. Usually I don't like that, but just knowing that it was a theater full of fans having genuine reactions was really cool, and I really enjoyed that. And to have a movie where reactions can be as honest as that is really something special, and I really enjoyed the brutality and just how Ghostface was portrayed in this. I'll kind of get into my feelings about Ghostface itself and who's behind the mask later on. I don't think that was handled as well, but kind of sticking with that is, I think the sequences in this movie, when it comes to specific set pieces or very suspenseful sequences in an apartment in the trailer, or in a subway in the trailer, I think those were 2 of the highlights by far, especially the subway scene. The subway scene was insane. Very, very intense, very slow building, and although I didn't really love the payoff as much, I think it could have had a little bit better payoff. The build up to it and the suspense was incredible. Same with the bodega scene in the trailers where Ghostface has a shotgun. That was awesome. It was cool to see him use something different, so you really know it's a different type of Ghostface. And then just how that was portrayed is very intense, and you're not safe out in public. I really enjoyed, my favorite part of this movie, like I've said, is just how different Ghostface was. It's been promised to us over and over and over again that Ghostface is going to be different in 3 and 4 and 5 and 6. This time it's actually very different, and along with that, it's very faithful to the franchise. I loved how throughout the movie there's so many references to the franchise, something I'll talk about in a spoiler review coming soon. So many references to the franchise. Every single movie, it's usually just number 1 that gets referenced, because that's the one that they only want to talk about, or number 2, guys, it's Randy. Oh my gosh, Randy, remember when he did that in number 2? And then this time it's focusing on every single Ghostface that came before it, and it's actually genuinely interested in all the other movies, and I really appreciated that as a big fan of the franchise, someone who will be a franchise fan for as long as I live. I really enjoyed and I really appreciated that. Another thing that I enjoyed in this movie was the humor. Sometimes it was a little hit and miss, especially in past Scream films. I do think 1 is probably the funniest. 2 has some great moments, and then 4 and 5 have great moments as well. But this time it felt very on par with how Scream should feel. I think it was a little overboard with one character. I'll get into that soon. Obviously being the comic relief, and so it makes it a little hard to be attached to them and their feelings. But I think for overall, the humor was done very well. This movie has a lot of heart, especially when it comes to the characters of Chad and Kirby, played by Mason Gooding and Hayden Panettiere respectively. I think they did an amazing job with their roles. Mason Gooding especially, he knocks it out of the park. Like, he's the heart of this movie. He just gives it his all. He's so like charismatic and naturally funny and likable. Mason Gooding is Chad, like I've said before, just exceptional. He's like Dewey in this movie, where you just love him so much. But I don't think he's as good as Dewey. Dewey's like one of my favorite characters of all time. But he does a great job. You know, a great homage to Dewey. He just is really, really good in this movie. He's very funny. He has a lot of great moments, especially with Jenna Ortega, that come off as really meaningful and, you know, very heartfelt and very genuine. Side note with that Dewey stuff, this movie does an exceptional job of paying tribute to Dewey, and, you know, it makes him feel like he was a character who lived in the franchise. He's someone that survived all the attacks except the last one. There's photos of him, drawings of him, and he's mentioned, and there's a great scene with Gale, I almost said Sidney, with Gale and Sam, and his theme plays, and they talk about family, and I love that. I love Dewey the GOAT, man. Gosh. Closing out the positives, the Carpenter sisters were really written well in this movie. I think their dynamic and their struggles in this movie are a little more interesting than the last one, since there isn't like a big secret between them, and like Richie isn't there to kind of like drive them apart. It is interesting to see how they operate like together, and obviously they do still have their differences and their struggles, but the core dilemma between them was very interesting, and you really feel for both of them. Both of them are kind of in the right, but also kind of in the wrong, and I thought it was very interesting in a way that I really didn't expect. Also, real fast, this movie is paced pretty well. There's not a lot of downtime between like chase sequences or reveals or like great moments between characters, so I really appreciated that. Some of the performances or just some small moments really stuck out as just like odd. Like, there's some moments or some lines between like Sam and Tara that just feel weird. There's a line from a character where he goes to like the main characters and he's like, "You guys have been through a lot," and it just comes off like, I was like, dude, what are you talking about? Like, it just feels so out of place, so weird, because they're just like showing like a bunch of history from the franchise, and he's like, "You guys have been through a lot." No way, I didn't know. And then I think a few characters stood out as not too great, especially Mindy and Gale. They don't really give Mindy a lot to do in this movie, apart from being like Randy, and I don't think she can really hold a candle to Randy. She reminded me a lot of Scream 2 Randy, and I don't really like Scream 2 Randy, and oh no, heaven forbid, I don't like something about Scream 2 or something about Randy, but I thought she just kind of came off as a little annoying, a little over the top, like how Randy is in Scream 2. She tries to explain like the rules of surviving a franchise, like, oh, now we're in a franchise, and it just comes off as a little like ham-fisted and shoved in, especially since like the whole movie doesn't really focus, and I'll get into this in a minute. The whole movie doesn't really focus on the meta commentary. It kind of sheds that meta aspect of Scream, except for like, hey, we're in a franchise, hint hint, and then, you know, something else, line about being in a franchise, something else. It just felt very weird to me, very like shoehorned in. And I mean, I liked Mindy a lot in Scream 5. I think she's one of the better parts of Scream 5. I really enjoyed her, but I think the radio silence and the script writers just kind of went overboard with this one, with her personality and her character just being so over the top and so like this and that and this and that, and like, oh my gosh, did you know this? Oh my gosh, this is that, this. Oh. And it's like, okay, like I get it. She's Randy, but at a certain point, especially when she's just surrounded by characters like Chad and Tara and Sam, or Kirby, she becomes like the least interesting part of that group, and you just kind of start to not care about her. I'm probably in the minority on this one. I probably am like totally in the wrong for a lot of people, but just me personally, I found her a little grating, annoying, and she kind of took me out of the movie. Going along with that is Gale. I'm a little more positive on Gale than Mindy, but Gale just doesn't really get a lot to do in this movie, kind of like in Scream 5. I mean, she gets a great phone call, she gets a great sequence in her apartment, and actually a pretty few funny moments as well, but I just don't think that they utilized her as well as they could, and it honestly feels like she was just written in here to get a phone call, get a little bit of, you know, fans who normally wouldn't be returning to come back and watch the sixth one just in case for some reason they wouldn't. It kind of felt like that to me. My last mixed aspect is the ghost face reveal. I don't think it worked that well. I liked some aspects of it, and I'm trying not to talk about spoilers here. I thought a few aspects of it worked really well and were really cool, but overall it was a letdown. Normally it would be in the bad, but since my favorite part of the Scream movies are like how the ghost faces just totally go off the rails after the reveal. The ghost face reveal, it was weird. The motives for being Ghostface were okay. They're decent. The motive for Ghostface is cool. It's interesting. I really probably won't say more than that. I kind of have mixed feelings about it, and that's why it's in the mixed. And then it just felt a little off. They do some cool things with Ghostface in this movie, but overall, I think I was hoping for something a little more fresh, a little more different, maybe tied into the overall part of the movie more. It is easily probably the weakest part of the film, as many people have said. I don't think it works as well as it could, and it definitely doesn't work as well as it has in the past. I think the best ghost faces to me still are Stu and Jill and Richie from Screams 1, 4, and 5. I think they all do a great job with their performances after the reveal, and their motives are all interesting. I know a lot of people dog on Richie. I'm a big Jack Quaid fan, and I think he just does a great job of becoming unhinged. In this movie, the Ghostface doesn't really get a chance to shine after the reveal, so that was kind of a bummer. And heading into the bad, again, the meta commentary for me just didn't work here. It's little to none. They talk a little bit about true crime dramas and franchises, and it just didn't work for me at all. I really was kind of hoping for more. It's not by any means a bad movie. I really enjoy this movie, actually. It's easily in my top 3 Scream movies, but I just don't think that it does as good of a job with the meta commentary as other movies. And probably part of that is them trying to shed a lot of the old Scream identity in effort to keep it fresh, in effort to keep it new. No Sidney, no meta commentary, a lot of different things when it comes to Ghostface, which I think a lot of it works, like the opening scene and part of the Ghostface reveal, and focus on different characters. But then, with that, you lose some of the charm of Scream, which is the meta commentary, the self-awareness, characters like Dewey, Sidney, Gale, but sometimes franchises can evolve. Another negative, new characters. They just didn't really work for me here. They don't get a lot to do. They don't do a lot in the movie. And the movie is just more interested, along with the viewer, at least if you're me, in Chad, Kirby, Sam, Tara. You're just more interested in those characters because the movie doesn't really give any effort at all to setting up the new ones. And also, the last thing, kind of slightly spoilery. So you have 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I really didn't think this movie had stakes that mattered. There's a few logic gaps in this movie that were a little hard for me to get over. I'm like, oh, that's funny. It happens in Scream 2, Scream 1, haha. Yeah, they probably couldn't have done that. And then the stakes, just don't feel all the way there. The movie always talks about, oh, the big stakes are here. Everyone's at risk. But then, no, not everyone's at risk. It feels like that. And I think that, when they inevitably make a Scream 7, I think they can learn from that and up the stakes, up the ante. So anyways, guys, that was my review of Scream 6. Overall, I really loved it, genuinely enjoyed it. I love this franchise. It takes a lot for me not to like this franchise. I would probably say this is a 8.5 out of 10. Maybe a 9, recency bias. Let's hit it with the recency bias. 9 out of 10. Good movie. Good time, man. All these movies are different. They're just a fun time. I really enjoy them. My ranking right now is probably 1 at the top, 5 and 6 tied, 4, and then 2, and then 3. I'm not a big of a fan of 2, and I'm not that big of a fan of 3. But overall, guys, if you're interested in more Scream content, I've got a spoiler review coming soon. And yeah, my name is Carter Walker. Please like and subscribe. Comment if you've seen Scream 6. What did you think about it? What's your franchise ranking? Be sure to check out other reviews. And as always, have a great rest of your day.